Remember how we just did our Bush segment 12 minutes ago? Yeah, well, it's time for another one. Not that we've had 3 new scandals since then. The new scandal rate is estimated at only 1 per every 20 minutes or so. No, in our third story tonight, due to the abundance of election coverage to compensate for the shortfall in our usual watchdogging, we now offer an extra serving of Bush. Number 3, Not Investigating Waterboarding-Gate. CIA Director Michael Hayden yesterday admitted waterboarding does not seem to be legal. But he also claimed it was legal when the CIA did it in 2002 and 2003. Why? No, you didn't miss the Waterboarding's Just Fine Act of 2001. The Justice Department simply says so. Therefore, Attorney General Mukasey testified yesterday he will not investigate anyone for waterboarding back then, saying his agency cannot investigate conduct that his agency authorized. All of which explains Senator Dick Durbin's new letter to Mukasey explaining, no, I wasn't asking you to investigate the waterboarders. I want you to investigate the people who said it was okay in the first place. A probe that Senator Durbin is now asking of the DOJ's Inspector General. Bringing us to number 2, the original Waterboarding-Gate. The New York Times reporting that the CIA destroyed its waterboarding tapes at the same time the judge in the Moussaoui case was asking about them, conflicting with Hayden's claim last December that the tapes were destroyed only after it had been determined they had no relevance to any judicial inquiries. And at number 1, Telecom Immunity-Gate. The Senate still not taking sides on whether to give big telecom companies immunity for helping the Bush administration illegally eavesdrop on Americans and whatever they plan to do next. The FISA vote now expected Tuesday, Mr. Bush having said he will veto any FISA bill which lacks that immunity, even though he says vetoing the bill will endanger American lives. All of which fodder again for our Broken Government series with John Dean, White House counsel in the Nixon administration, author of Broken Government, How Republican Rule Destroyed the Legislative, Executive, and Judicial Branches. John, good evening.
Good evening, Keith.
Are we seeing a new pattern here among the new hires? Okay, I'll uphold the law, but please don't expect me to go after the guys who broke the law before I got here.
Well, that's certainly a fair way to characterize it, but it does run a little bit deeper. If, for example, the CIA and its contractors were really relying and reasonably relying on the Department of Justice in taking their action in waterboarding, then indeed there's a lot of precedent for them to have a free pass. That happened during Watergate. The burglars who broke into Daniel Ellsberg's psychiatrist's office were told by 2 White House aides, Hunt and Liddy, that the president had authorized it. That was a false statement, but they relied on it, and they were given a pass. So there is precedent for this sort of pass.
Does the DOJ determination, though, of 2002, that waterboarding was legal at that point, does it carry any legal weight? Does it really, as Mukasey has kind of posited this thing, does it really tie his hands today, or does he have any options?
It really doesn't carry any weight with the courts. It certainly has some value within the Department of Justice, but I think that Senator Durbin has put his finger on the question, and what if Mukasey were playing it straight, he'd be looking at, was it a reasonable determination? Were there games being played between the Department of Justice and the White House? And if that's the case, indeed, then these may not be reasonable to even rely on, but it might be part of a grand conspiracy to employ what is in effect war crimes. So that's the rub, that he's refusing to even look at that issue.
The Ellsberg case that you just referred to obviously included a president being falsely relied upon as the authoritative figure, legally and otherwise. We know President Bush signed off on the waterboarding. Is he in legal jeopardy for having government agents break the law? And if he is in legal jeopardy, where would that legal jeopardy originate from? Who would prosecute that? Who would follow that up?
Well, of course, under the Nixon doctrine, he wouldn't be, because as Nixon famously said, if a president does it, it's legal. That doctrine doesn't carry much weight. I don't think Bush, as a practical matter, has much exposure, certainly not in the United States or abroad. I think possibly somebody like Dick Cheney or some of his aides could indeed have some problems in the future where states and countries that prosecute war crimes and more information comes out, they may well have jeopardy. So I don't think the president himself is going to be in any trouble, but I think Cheney and people like David Addington are going to be very careful what countries they travel to when they leave office.
Goodness. Tuesday we have the FISA vote. If the Democrats cave in, and they agree to shield the telecoms from lawsuits filed by Americans, never mind any prosecution, but just the civil action. Does that mean the end of any possible inquiry in any way, shape, or form into that illegal wiretapping and whatever the next stage might be of the monitoring of Internet and phone communications?
Well, it certainly would end the civil pursuit of that inquiry if they do cave. And if they do cave, it's not likely they're going to be inclined to pick up a congressional investigation, which should indeed be digging into these issues, and they've been very reluctant to do it so far. So this may be the end of the story we're seeing, and I think it's to the chagrin of a lot of people who thought the law meant something and that they indeed were supposed to follow it.
Extraordinary. The former White House counsel, John Dean, author, of course, of Broken Government. Great thanks, as always, for joining us, John, and have a great weekend.
You too, Keith. Thank you.